175 foreigners have been arrested for possessing Ghana cards and attempting to use them to obtain Guinean passports. Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa says the development shows ongoing security threats within the passport system, but assures that tighter measures have been introduced as part of ongoing reforms.
2024, Ghana.
All right. Welcome to This Week in Ghana. 300 foreigners arrested in Ghana. Inflation drops to 8%. And unfortunately, 6 people pass in a tragedy and Stampede. Before we get into those stories, we like to do introductions. I will turn it over to my co-host before I introduce myself. Oh, I think you're muted.
Hello, Joe. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you, everybody who has joined this live stream with myself and Joe Hatagwa. My name is Ivy Prosper. I am a producer, a YouTube creator, a speaker, a writer, and I have experience as a documentary film producer. And I also do consultations on Ghana, and I do work as an MC and work moderating panel discussions. And so you can find me on my channel, Ivy Prosper. The two of us do this bi-weekly live stream, sharing news about Ghana and occasionally talking about news in other parts of Africa. So I'm excited to dive into the conversation today.
Absolutely. And I am Joe Hatagwa, founder of Authentic African Media and Authentic African. Our goal is to help people do one of 3 things: visit, move, and invest on the continent of Africa. And we're bridging the gap between those living on the continent and those living in the diaspora. For those of you who are new, we do this live stream bi-weekly or every other week. I guess that can be seen 2 different ways. So we do this every other week. And it is always going to be about the news of the day in Ghana. For those of you interested in moving, visiting, investing, or just curious about Ghana, Ivy is there full time. I lived there for a couple of years, and I am a resident, a non-citizen resident of Ghana currently. So with that, let's jump into today's story. So as you saw at the onset, 300 folks were foreigners were arrested, and so we're going to play the rest of the video or another chunk of the video, and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Ghana's passport fees saw a sharp increase from 100 cedis to 500 cedis for the standard 32-page booklet and 644 cedis for the 48-page option. The hike drew widespread criticism from the then opposition National Democratic Congress, NDC. Addressing the media on Wednesday, the minister announced a reduction in fees from 500 to 350 cedis and the introduction of a same-day passport application service.
2,000 Ghana cedis is a decent sum for that one-day super expedited service. We are saying that if you don't really have an emergency, you can still go for the efficient 350 cedis. Under 15 days, it will be delivered.
On the need for new reforms, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa disclosed that over 300 foreigners have been arrested with Ghana cards while attempting to secure Ghanaian passports.
We are rolling out a no-nonsense approach. Any foreigner who attempts to lay hands on our passport will be promptly apprehended and prosecuted. We have rounded up 375 people who we believe are not Ghanaians.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Ministry is investigating a viral video allegedly showing immigration officers removing U.S. deportees from a hotel in Accra.
The position is that national security is verifying. They are checking the authenticity of that video. And once that is concluded, I'm sure that you will hear either from us or the minister in charge of government communications.
As the minister.
All right, so we'll leave it there because that now speaks to some other things, and we wanted to focus on the couple of stories that were discussed there. One, the reducing of the fees, and then specifically those who were arrested. Can we do a quick for those who are watching and who may not be aware, what the conversion to dollars is for 2,000 Ghana cedis, which is the expedited, I think if I remember, the expedited same day service to get the passport, versus I think what he said 200 Ghana cedis, or it was a couple hundred Ghana cedis to do it in 15 days. What's the conversion rate now on the dollar to CD? Just so people can understand what 2,000 would be versus what the couple hundred would be for the average person getting a passport. I think you're on mute. I think you're muted, Ivy. I think you're muted.
2,000 Ghana cedis is about $180 US.
Wow. Okay.
Approximately.
Okay. And then I think he said, what was it, 300 for 15 days? So then the 300 Ghana cedis would be, you know, like what?
Less than $30. It's like maybe 24 something. I don't know. I would have to check the exact rates because it's been fluctuating for USD between like 10 to like 11.5 lately.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll talk about inflation being reduced as well, and I think that has probably a lot to do with the economic turnaround and the changing of the value of the CD to the dollar. So that just for everyone's context, I wanted to just speak to that so that everybody knew what that 2,000 he meant was, and the whatever 300 or whatever it was for the 15 days. Now on that, the other piece, the fraud in the system, people with Ghana cards applying for passports, how they got fraudulent Ghana cards. I don't know how they found this out. Your thoughts on this story and you know, just being on the ground and you know, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's important to crack down on people getting passports fraudulently. I think because Ghana is seen as a peaceful place to live and do business, there are people from other African countries that do try to come here and do try to set up lives here. The largest number are Nigerians that tend to come here the most, but there are a number of people who come from different African countries. But then we also have people who come from Asian countries who also want to do business here. And we've heard stories about some of them, you know, illegally getting identification as Ghanaians when they're not officially Ghanaians. So it's good for the government to really take the time to crack down on anything that's happening that is illegal, and to try to streamline things. At the same time that they've done this, they've also reduced the cost of getting passports for Ghanaians. They've reduced the price that it costs for them to get it. So they're trying to do two things at once, trying to make it more affordable for the local Ghanaian, but then they're also trying to crack down on people who are doing illegal things to get the ID.
Yeah. And, you know, look, obviously every country has to do what they can to, you know, protect their citizens, etc. You know, this is something that you hear a lot on the ground from people, that there are people that are going around the systems and getting Ghana cards when they shouldn't. You know, I went through a pretty rigorous process to get my first Ghana card. You know, I had to do a background check in Sierra Leone. I could choose between Sierra Leone or the United States where I wanted to do my background check. It was just easier for me to get it in Sierra Leone, so I did that. I had to go to the office, do the fingerprint, take the picture. It was a lengthy process. And so that was just to get my Ghana card. Now to renew it, it was a pretty lengthy process, but wasn't as bad. And, you know, so to see that so many people have gone through that and figured out a way to fast track it, tells me that they probably just paid an individual who works there to be able to get it done and to do this without doing all of the necessary elements that are required to actually do it properly. It was kind of disturbing to see that footage. We're not really sure what that is. They said they need to independently verify it, but it was reported that that woman that was being dragged at the very end of the video there was a deportee from the United States, as if you guys might remember. At least that's what was said in the Channel One.
Right.
They said that, and the minister himself said they need to verify. They want to independently verify that is the case. But if that is the case, that is a whole nother problem and a whole nother set of issues. And I guess once we get more insight on that, we can talk about that next week. But just because it was mentioned in that video, and many of you might have caught that before I cut the video off, I did want to just acknowledge that. But I don't have too much insight into that. And so, if we hear more about it, we would definitely share. So moving on from that to inflation. So, obviously, as we know, we have talked about this previously. In the few years that I have been going back and forth to Ghana, the currency has fluctuated significantly, right? I mentioned this for those who are new. I mentioned that when I first went to Ghana, it was 6 cedis for every $1. By the time I moved away from Ghana, it was 15 cedis to every $1. And now it's right around between 10 and 11 cedis to every $1. Is that right? And so obviously there's been some change, and many people, of course, are applauding Mahama and his government for working on reducing inflation. And then, of course, I guess by the inflation being reduced, the value of the currency has increased as well. And so with that, we want to go to a video, and then we'll have some commentary on the other side. Oops. There we go.
Ghana's inflation rate has slumped to 8% in October 2025, the lowest since early 2023, and the 10th straight month of decline. This represents a 1.4 percentage point drop from September's 9.4%. Month-on-month inflation also dipped by 0.4%. The government statistician Dr. Idrisu Al-Hassan attributed the fall to exchange rate stability, improved food supply, and tighter fiscal and monetary measures.
4% in September 2025, and well below the 23.8% recorded at the end of 2024. This means that on the average, prices of goods and services in October 2025 were 8% higher than in October 2024. This marks the 10th consecutive month of decline and the lowest inflation rate since June 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, the steady fall from 23.8% last December to 8% today shows that Ghana is firmly on the path towards macroeconomic stability. The month-on-month inflation rate for October was negative 0.4%.
All right. So the numbers I heard there that I think were pretty alarming was 23% at the end of last year, and it's down to 8%. And of course, one of the challenges that I remember hearing a ton is inflation was going up, the value of the cedi was going down, and so people were making less money, but the goods they were buying cost more than they even previously cost, right? So it was actually happening in the opposite direction. And so now it seems like, going in this direction, and it is going to relieve some of the burden on some folks. But your thoughts on this, the inflation dropping down from 23% end of last year to 8% as of October of this year? Oh, you're on mute.
I keep going on mute. I think it's good. The average person will be able to manage things a bit better when the inflation is not as high as it's been. I think this is the lowest it's been since 2021. So people are definitely seeing the difference, and they're going to feel the difference. And I hope that it's not something that is just temporary, because it seems like we have these fluctuations where, even throughout the year, we've seen the currency become, the best performing currency, and then the worst become a worst performing currency. So it's like, I hope it's not a roller coaster ride. I hope that it's something that is maintained, so it makes it easier for the average person to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, I'm the person who asks questions of the Uber driver every time I get to the country, because they and then my former housekeeper, just kind of understanding what the average person is dealing with and what they see. And the general sentiment, I think there's like some hope, right? I mean, obviously under a new administration, there's a lot of times some portion of the population feels that there's hope there. Within the first 100 days, they're almost all disillusioned, right? And so it does seem to be a little bit more sustained in this case with Mahama because of these things. I don't know how much this is impacting the everyday person on all of their purchases, but it does seem like people do notice the differences in the value of the currency increasing and also inflation decreasing. So these are all good things. We like to see this happen and things moving in that direction. So let's hope that it continues to move in that direction. What I will say is, who I see complaining about this is people who operate in USD in Ghana, right? Many of the foreign nationals who are in Ghana who use the dollar seem to not be happy about the increase in value of the Ghana CD. And, there are many people who benefit from the Ghana CD being lower in value than increasing in value. And so many of those people don't seem to be as happy today to hear these kinds of numbers and these reports than the average everyday person. So I just want to point that out. I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on that.
It's definitely true, because people who operate in dollars, there was a point when $1 US was 15 Ghana cedis, and for them it was great. But now that it's going down, they're feeling it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, they can afford to feel it, right? Not the average everyday Ghanaian can.
Yeah.
Now, with that, we're going to move to the next story. Unfortunately, there was a stampede at the military stadium. All victims were female, and they all tragically lost their lives. They were recruits for the military. And so we're going to play a little bit of a news segment that speaks to this, and then we will have some commentary on the other side.
Live and around the world on myjoyonline.com. My name is Faustina Safo. Coming up tonight, the minority in Parliament describes government's 2026 budget statement and economic policy as growthless and jobless, as it takes aim at the IMF for allegedly failing in its oversight responsibility of government.
Sorry, guys. I want to get.
I was going to say, is that the right video?
I mean, it's a long news story, so it's in here. Here, let me find
Finance Minister
I have another
Dr.
story.
Kasiela Tuforsen said.
I have another story here. Because there's a video that I had. There's also a video in Tree. We can use that one if we need to, but I do have another video that I think I can use here. No, that was the right video. It's just very long. Let's see if I can get to it. If not, we can just read from the story.
The right people get into the training.
Okay, here we go. This is it. This is the story. Okay, here we go.
To creating job opportunities for young people while equipping them with skills to support national development and improve living standards. The following report has more.
The recruitment portal for police and other security agencies, which was supposed to open on Saturday, the 15th of November 2025, has been postponed to Monday, the 17th of November 2025, as announced by the Interior Minister.
In the light of the unfortunate incident that occurred on Wednesday during the Armed Forces recruitment process, the Ministry of Interior, in consultation with the security chiefs, has decided to postpone the start date of the application from the 15th, which is tomorrow, Saturday.
How they are healthy, how level. And for the
injured. Well, during a visit to one of the
Here we go.
stadium Stampede to submit names of qualified relatives for recruitment.
Mahama, we will do
All right, so
everything humanly possible.
Sorry, guys, I was trying to find it in the video. I thought it was going to be the first part of the video. It was not. So what we are going to do now is she's going to tell the story of what actually happened and what their plan is, the plan is for the military. So we'll get into that now.
To make sure that this process, the right people get into the training.
The sector minister also dismissed suggestions that the portal should be opened for only the required applicants that the various security agencies are looking for. He said that it is opened for all to apply to give equal opportunity for joinees.
Away from that, the government has directed families of the 6 applicants who died in Wednesday's Elwak Sports Stadium Stampede to submit names of qualified relatives for recruitment into the Ghana Armed Forces. The gesture, according to officials, is to honor the memories of the victims who died while pursuing their dream of serving their country. The tragic incident occurred when hundreds of hopeful applicants attempted to enter the stadium for documentation and body selection, resulting in a deadly rust, and that claimed the 6 lives and left many others injured. Well, during a visit to one of the bereaved families at Enyan in the Central Region, the Deputy Defense Minister, Ernest Bojajemfi, disclosed that President John Dramani Mahama has instructed that each affected family be given an automatic slot.
So, well, your thoughts on this story, Ivy, your thoughts. And they were all women. I don't think that was mentioned here. But your thoughts on this story. I think you're on mute.
I think it just exposes how the process could be better. Sure. As far as, I think that what they could have done was people had to do these applications. They should have done some kind of system where there are blocks of time. So for instance, you have a number of people who you come between, 6 to 6:15, and some other group 6:15 to 6:30. Like they should have had people in blocks of time. So then that way it staggers the number of people who are coming, rather than having this massive crowd of thousands of young people coming at the same time. And then you see what happens at sometimes even concerts and festivals where there's too many people, and then they break the security barriers. So they literally push through these barriers that were made, and then that's when people are pushing, and then they end up stampeding. And I think that the fact that it's 6 females who were injured, it could even be just a matter of their size when the stampede was happening. Like I don't think that it was something that it was an intentional for women to be the ones who got the most injured. I think it just happens to be the case with the nature of the way things were. But I think it exposes that the system needs to change, and there needs to be more sympathy, because there were people in Parliament. There was a particular woman in Parliament who made a statement that I found to be quite tone deaf to what people are going through when they've lost their children who went out to look for work and then they didn't come back. Right. So I think that this shows that the military needs to make changes with how they do their recruiting process.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think it also exposes the lack of jobs, right? The fact that so many people were stampeding to get a chance to potentially get into the military. That just means that there aren't as many alternative options for these individuals. And the hunger for these roles is so high that they pushed and stampeded to try to get in line to hopefully be selected as one of those people. I think it's a good thing that they're offering to give an automatic spot to someone else in the family, because that was a potential for that person in the family to help their family with a role. I hope that they do more for those individuals, because they just lost someone. And although, the crowd is what did it, I think, as you mentioned, the process could have been better. And with a different process, it's probably more likely that this would not have happened in this way. Some people are saying poor logistics planning. If you don't plan logistics properly, how do you plan national security sufficiently? And there's a saying that I've heard many times, and I think it's important here, is if you plan to fail, then you should fail. If you fail to plan, then you should plan to fail, because obviously, not having the right systems in place can lead to these kinds of things. And it really is unfortunate. And I hope that they do more for these families than just offering an automatic spot.
Yeah, I don't think that suffice, because what if somebody in the family doesn't want to be in the military? It just happens to be they're the ones who wanted to be in it. It doesn't mean anyone else in the family wants that slot.
Good point. A really good point. So we'll watch closely and see what happens. And then for future reference, for those of you mentioning it, yes, in the future, I will make sure to bookmark or timestamp the video before we press play. Thank you for being patient, all of you who are watching. If you know what goes on behind the scenes, you would give me more grace. So with that, we are moving on to the next story. There has been an update in the helicopter crash that made international news, with a number of officials in Ghanaian senior level officials who experienced loss of life in that helicopter crash. There's an official probe that confirmed the cause of the crash and some of the safety gaps exposed in the aviation system. So we will play a quick video and have some commentary on the other side. One moment. All right.
A government investigation says poor weather caused the helicopter crash that killed Ghana's defense and environment ministers along with 6 others in August. The report found a Z-9 military helicopter lost altitude in a sudden downdraft while flying from Accra to Obuasi. It says the aircraft was airworthy but lacked modern safety systems. The panel, appointed by President John Mahama, presented its finding in Accra today, and our correspondent Justice Baidu was there.
The 3-month investigation led by Ghanaian authorities with help from Chinese and American investigators showed that a sudden and powerful downcraft was responsible for the catastrophic helicopter crash that took the lives of 8 persons, including the Ministers for Health and Science of Ghana.
On the day, the visibility was much worse. From eyewitness accounts, the visibility was down to close to 200 meters at some point. There was no formal information on the weather available to the pilots.
A downcraft is a strong current of wind blowing vertically that can rapidly overpower the motors of a helicopter, reducing the effective lift being generated by the craft. The report clarified that this sudden aerodynamic failure occurred without any failures from the pilot who was manning the helicopter at the time. The investigation also revealed gaps in the national aviation infrastructure. An example includes the limited navigational aids that were available and a lack of simulator training for Air Force pilots and the absence of flight monitoring and road tracking systems that could help in flights like these in the country. This helicopter crash was the worst in Ghana's history, at least in the last 10 years.
All right. So, It's unfortunate, but I mean, there were a lot of things to blame there. Initially, they said it wasn't the pilot's fault. Mostly, obviously training for the pilot or training in that kind of condition, the lack of, what we call air traffic control in the West, and also, the helicopter itself was limited in its capacity. Your thoughts on the outcome that was determined for the reason for this crash?
I mean, there's not really much we can do with respect to what happened, and with the outcome. I think a lot of it confirms some suspicions that people had. One of them being the weather, because I saw a story that the same day there was a helicopter that landed in the middle of a school grounds because of the weather conditions. So I imagine that weather would have played a role in what happened with them as well. And then also, I did hear from accounts of people who worked with some of these individuals that the helicopter was supposed to undergo maintenance, and it would have undergone maintenance after this particular trip, is what I learned from someone. And so, had it been taken more seriously, they should have taken a different helicopter or taken the road, because it is risky to take a flight with a machine that needs to undergo maintenance. So it's just really an unfortunate situation that happened, and losing the lives of people. So yeah, I'm glad that they put the report out, and I know that the families were looking for some sort of closure, but I know that some of them feel that it's not going to bring them back, so they didn't really place a lot of importance on getting this information. But at the same time, there are many people who wanted to know exactly what happened, because what it can do is it actually is a learning lesson for the future, to teach the importance of what to do in situations where there are sudden weather changes, or paying attention to the weather and not traveling in times when there might be some severe conditions. And then also making sure to have maintenance and have the latest aircrafts available, rather than anything that may be having some issues that could cause safety concerns.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think, just to add to that point about the low visibility, maximum at 1.200 meters, many, and we've heard of very famous helicopter crashes in the United States. And, the main issue for that is inclement weather. Generally, it's not because of the helicopter itself. So when you combine those two things and no air traffic control, because there isn't someone giving you ability to guide where you're going, or not enough people to guide you, you can't see where you're going yourself. And then the craft itself does not have the ability to, even if a person who's skilled enough to be able to maneuver through that terrible wind situation. I think there are too many elements that were made this a tragic situation, and I do think that there's going to need to be some work to fix all of these things. Maybe some investment is going to be really needed in new aviation crafts, and also more frequent maintenance. If that information that was shared with you is correct, that means that they knew that there was something that needed to be done, and the fact that they were going to fly it one more time before it got the maintenance tells me that there's a lack in process there as well, and regulation. So I do hope that they do some things to obviously fix this in the future. I don't know how many people travel via helicopter in the country. Generally, I would imagine it's most of the elites. So I think it's something that they probably will push to make a change in the future, because of course they don't want to end up in that same position. Okay, with that, two more stories to cover. The last is well, we actually, one of them was the passport application fees being reduced, which we already talked about earlier, and then the last is Ghana was named Africa's #1 travel destination for 2025, if I'm not mistaken. We don't have a video on that, but just as someone who's traveled to a few countries, I understand why it would be named that. Obviously that's in December. They're anticipating close to 2 million people, or at least over 1.5 million people, right, coming to Ghana. So your thoughts on Ghana being named as the #1 travel destination? Yeah, your thoughts on that?
So the story that I read was that Ghana was named #1 travel destination for the month of November.
Okay, that's what it is.
And that was by the Lonely Planet. And the Lonely Planet, a lot of people know, they have been, known for travel destination information for decades. And so they ranked Ghana at the top of their list. And I think they used some statistics from the Spectre Index, is what it was called. And I think it just is an example of Ghana's popularity. I mean, Ghana still, for the last few years, has continued to grow in becoming known as a hotspot to visit in Africa. And there are more and more people who are curious about this country, curious about the experiences. And I really believe that the reason why people keep wanting to come to Ghana has a lot to do with culture, with food, with wanting to experience something different than what they're used to experiencing. And then for the African diaspora, it has a lot to do with wanting to connect with their African ancestral roots. So there's various reasons why people want to visit. For people who are non-African descent, there's a tendency to want to be curious about it because traditionally, the European gaze on Africa has been about safaris, typically those kinds of experiences. But this is something different that I know that they're also curious about too. So that, together with the African diaspora having an interest in Ghana, I think is what helps it to become one of the top usually listed places to visit. It has its challenges in Ghana, but there's things that people are curious about that make them want to come visit.
Yeah, and I mean, you having been a part of the Year of Return and Beyond the Return, right? Being, you and I having gone and participated as a visitor, when you visit Ghana for the first time, especially if you've been to other countries in West Africa, during that time, there is a magical moment, right? A huge contingent of the West comes to Ghana in the December month, Dirty December, of course, as it is affectionately called. I have been in West Africa for the month of December for 7 years straight. I have not celebrated Christmas in the United States for 7 years. So that tells you something. I lived there I've only lived on the continent for 4 of those 7 years, right? So this year, it was 8 years actually. 4 of the 8 years I've been spending there. So, and I will be doing it again.
Back?
Yeah, absolutely. I will be there. I will be in Ghana for at some point in time in December. So absolutely, I will be back. There is no other place I'd rather be at that time of year. So the Lonely Planet got this one right, for sure. I agree. I agree with the Lonely Planet. Okay. On that, I think we're going to end this a little early on a good note. Any final words or any thoughts before we go, Ivy?
Not for me. Just a reminder that if you're ever thinking about coming to Ghana for a visit or to live, that's important to also learn about the news and what's happening to get an understanding of the lay of the land.
Yes, very good point. I agree with that 100%. And if you haven't already, of course, you want to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're notified every time a new video comes out. And we want you to like both channels, right? So head over to Ivy Prosper if you're coming over to my channel. There's a lot of new folks who came in from the video from last Monday. So shout out to all of you who are joining the live stream. Make sure you head over to Ivy's channel for all the content that she does in Ghana. recent Olympians and others that I've seen recently. So check that out. And if you're watching on Ivy's channel, come on over to Authentic African and subscribe to my channel as well. The ways that you can support, if there are other ways that you can support, if you have the means, it's going to be in the description, so you can check that out. But it is free to hit that thumbs up. It is free to hit that share button, and it is free to subscribe. So we do ask that you do support us in that way. And with that, guys, we want to thank you all for watching. We will see you all very soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching.